The summons. The holographic seal materialized above Commander Kira Thorne's desk without warning. 7 interlocking rings, each representing one of the founding species of the Galactic Assembly. She'd seen this symbol in history files, but never expected it to appear in her quarters aboard the research vessel Wanderer's Hope. Commander Thorne, the automated voice resonated through her cabin. By decree of the Galactic Council, you are summoned to stand judgment on behalf of humanity. Departure coordinates transmitted. Compliance is mandatory. The message dissolved, leaving only silence and the soft hum of the ship's engines. Kira stared at the space where the projection had been. 23 years old, barely 3 years out of the academy, and somehow she'd been chosen to represent Earth before the most powerful governing body in known space. Her hands trembled as she activated the intercom. Bridge, this is Thorne. Plot a course for the transmitted coordinates. Priority 1. Captain Hendrick's voice crackled back. Commander, those coordinates are deep in assembly space. That's a 2-week journey through controlled sectors. I'm aware, sir. She closed her eyes. I've been summoned to the council. A long pause. Then quietly, God help us all. 14 days later, the Wanderer's Hope dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Viridian Nexus, a massive space station that served as the assembly's seat of power. It was ancient beyond human comprehension, built by civilizations that had reached the stars when Earth's ancestors were still learning to make fire. The station dominated the viewport, a crystalline structure that seemed to fold space around itself. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species orbited its perimeter, some so alien that Kira couldn't identify their propulsion systems. Shuttle is ready, Commander, Lieutenant Park said from the doorway. I wish we could go with you. Kira shouldered her pack. Inside was everything Earth's diplomatic corps had managed to compile in 2 weeks. Cultural data, treaties, historical records. It felt woefully inadequate. If I don't return in 72 hours, she said, Captain Hendricks has orders to return to Earth and warn them. Warn them of what? That's what I'm about to find out. The shuttle ride to the station was smooth but silent. The assembly pilot, a spindly creature with 4 arms and bioluminescent skin, didn't acknowledge her presence. When they docked, 2 guards in powered armor flanked her immediately. Ambassador Thorne, one said through a translator. Follow. They led her through corridors that defied physics, hallways that seemed to curve up and around in impossible directions. Other beings passed by, some barely taller than her knee, others so massive they had to navigate through specially enlarged passages. None looked at her. None spoke. Finally, they reached a vast circular chamber. The ceiling stretched up hundreds of meters, disappearing into artificial clouds. Arranged in a semicircle were 7 elevated platforms, each occupied by a representative of the founding species. In the center, directly below them, stood a single platform barely 2 meters wide. That was where she would stand. Ambassador Kira Thorne of Earth, a voice boomed through the chamber. It came from everywhere and nowhere. You stand before the Galactic Council. Do you understand why you have been summoned? She stepped onto the platform, forcing her voice steady. I do not. A murmur rippled through the assembled representatives. Apparently, honesty wasn't what they expected. The centermost figure leaned forward. It was a Saltharian, humanoid but with silver skin that rippled like mercury. High Chancellor Vex, according to her briefing files. He'd held his position for 3 human lifetimes. Humanity has been under observation for 247 of your years, Vex said. In that time you have developed nuclear weapons, reached your moon, and begun to explore your local stellar neighborhood. You have done this with remarkable speed. Thank you, Kira said carefully. That was not a compliment. Vex's eyes, pure black orbs, fixed on her. In the history of the Assembly, 93 species have been observed during their developmental phase. Of those, 71 destroyed themselves before achieving meaningful space travel. Of the remaining 22, only 9 survived first contact with the broader galactic community. Kira's throat went dry. And the others? Were deemed too dangerous to exist. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Another council member spoke, this one resembling a crystalline tree with branches that chimed when they moved. Your species exhibits concerning patterns. Tribal warfare. Resource exploitation. Artificial intelligence development. Nuclear proliferation. Every indicator suggests humanity will either destroy itself or become a threat to galactic stability. Therefore, Vex continued, we have convened to pass judgment. You will present humanity's case. We will determine if your species deserves to continue existing, or if Earth must be quarantined until your civilization collapses under its own weight. Kira's mind raced. They were going to decide whether humanity lived or died, and they'd sent one junior officer to defend 7 billion souls. How long do I have to prepare? She asked. You misunderstand, Vex said. The judgment begins now. The prosecution. The first blow came from the left platform, where a being that resembled a floating collection of geometric shapes slowly rotated. Its voice was mathematical, cold, processed through algorithms that translated thought into sound. Human. Observe. The air in front of Kira shimmered, and suddenly she was watching Earth from space. But something was wrong. The landmasses were correct, but enormous craters scarred the continents. Oceans boiled. The atmosphere was thick with ash. This is Earth in Timeline Projection 2847 Alpha, the geometric being said. One possible future. Your species developed antimatter weapons. A territorial dispute escalated. Result: planetary extinction, including 847 other species native to your world. The image shifted. Now she saw vast factory complexes covering entire continents, the oceans turned gray with pollution, the sky choked with industrial smog. Timeline 3921 Beta. Unchecked industrialization. Your species prioritized growth over sustainability. Result: ecological collapse, mass extinction, civilization failure within 2 generations. Another shift. This time she saw massive ships, human-built, surrounding an alien world. Weapons firing. Cities burning. Timeline 6205 Gamma. Humanity achieves interstellar travel. Makes contact with the peaceful Rendan collective. Initial trade agreements collapse due to cultural misunderstandings. Result: a 40-year war that decimates both species and destabilizes an entire sector. Kira watched in horror as timeline after timeline played out, each showing a different path to destruction. In some, humanity destroyed itself. In others, they brought ruin to the galaxy. We have modeled 10,000 probable futures, the being said. In 8,732 of them, humanity causes catastrophic harm within the next 5 centuries. Your species is a statistical threat. The images vanished. Kira stood alone on her platform, her legs shaking. How could she argue against mathematics? Against predictive models based on centuries of observation? These are projections, she said, forcing strength into her voice. Not certainties. Projections based on observed patterns, a new voice said. This came from a reptilian being with scales that shifted through colors like an oil slick. Counselor Zreth of the Kasari Empire. Your species' history is a chronicle of violence. In the past century alone, you waged 2 global conflicts that killed over 100 million of your own kind. You developed weapons capable of ending all life on your planet, and came within moments of using them on multiple occasions. We also stepped back from that brink, Kira countered. We recognized the danger and chose differently. Chose differently? Or merely delayed the inevitable? Zretha's tail lashed. Your planet is still armed with thousands of nuclear weapons. Your nations still compete rather than cooperate. Your resources are finite, yet your consumption accelerates. This is not a species that has learned wisdom. This is a species in the eye of a hurricane, mistaking temporary calm for permanent peace. A third counselor spoke, this one vaguely insectoid with compound eyes that refracted light into rainbow patterns. We have specific examples, human. Your nation-states waged war over petroleum resources. You clear-cut forests for agriculture while knowing it destabilizes your climate. You develop artificial intelligences without adequate safeguards. Each decision prioritizes short-term gain over long-term survival. Your species even commercialized warfare, Zreth added. Created entire industries dedicated to building more efficient methods of killing. You export weapons to conflict zones, profiting from the suffering of others. Kira felt the weight of every accusation. She couldn't deny them. Every point was true, documented in humanity's blood-soaked history. But they were only showing one side. You're judging us by our worst moments, she said. That's not fair. Fair? High Chancellor Vex leaned forward. Fairness is a luxury for species that aren't existential threats. We have lost entire civilizations to our mercy, Ambassador Thorn. 3,000 years ago, the Assembly voted to allow the Kreth to continue developing despite warning signs. They seemed promising, artistic, philosophical. Within 5 centuries, they developed planet-killing weapons and declared holy war on 17 neighboring species. It took the combined might of the entire Assembly to stop them, at the cost of billions of lives. We cannot make that mistake again, the crystalline tree being chimed. The Kreth taught us that hope is not a strategy. We must act based on evidence, and the evidence condemns your species. Then why not destroy us already? Kira demanded. The words came out sharper than she intended, but she was tired of being lectured like a child. If we're so dangerous, why this trial? Why bring me here at all? Silence fell across the chamber. The counselors exchanged glances through means Kira couldn't quite perceive, communication happening on levels beyond her senses. Finally Vex spoke. Because we have been wrong before. Not about the Kreth, but about the Morvani. About the Hesh. About others we quarantined who might have deserved a chance. This judgment is not a formality, Ambassador. We genuinely seek to understand if humanity can be saved from itself. But understand this, he continued. The burden of proof lies with you. You must convince us that humanity is not just capable of change, but that it will change. We need more than promises. We need evidence that your species can overcome its nature. Kira looked up at the 7 counselors, alien faces regarding her with expressions she couldn't read. They'd already decided, she realized. This trial was just their way of easing their conscience before they passed sentence. Unless she could show them something they hadn't seen in all their models and projections and observations. Something that couldn't be predicted by algorithms or mathematical probabilities. She needed to show them what it meant to be human. I request a recess, she said. 24 hours to prepare my defense. Vex considered this. Granted. But Ambassador? Use your time wisely. This is not a debate you can win with rhetoric. We have heard thousands of species beg for their existence. Words are cheap. Truth is what we require. The platform beneath her feet began to descend, lowering her out of the judgment chamber. As the floor rose to meet her, Kira caught one last glimpse of the counselors above, 7 species united in their certainty that humanity was a mistake waiting to happen. She had 24 hours to prove them wrong. The guards led her to a small suite carved from the station's crystalline walls. As soon as the door sealed behind her, she collapsed onto the nearest seat and pulled out her datapad with shaking hands. Outside the window, stars wheeled by in their ancient dance, indifferent to the fate of one young species that had barely learned to reach beyond its cradle. Kira began to review every file Earth had sent with her, searching for the evidence that might save her world. But as she read through humanity's history, one question kept echoing in her mind. What if the Council was right? The defense begins. Kira didn't sleep. She spent the night surrounded by holographic displays, each showing a different piece of humanity's story. Wars and peace treaties. Disasters and rescue efforts. Genocides and reconciliations. The full spectrum of what humans were capable of, for better and worse. As dawn broke over the station, or what passed for dawn in the artificially lit corridors, she finally understood what she needed to do. The Council didn't need to hear about humanity's potential. They needed to understand what made humans different. When the guards arrived to escort her back to the judgment chamber, she'd slept only 2 hours. But her eyes were clear, her mind sharp with the clarity that comes from absolute necessity. The platform rose once more, lifting her into the center of the vast chamber. The 7 counselors waited in their positions, alien faces turned toward her with varying degrees of interest and skepticism. Ambassador Thorne, High Chancellor Vex intoned. You may present your defense. Kira took a breath. This was it. Everything depended on the next hour. Honored counselors, you've shown me projections of humanity's possible futures. You've catalogued our violence, our short-sightedness, our capacity for destruction. You're right about all of it. We are dangerous. We are flawed. We do terrible things to each other in our world. She paused, meeting the eyes of each counselor in turn. But you're making your judgment based on incomplete data. You've observed us for 247 years. That's barely a moment in our history. And more importantly, you've been watching us from the outside. You see our actions, but you don't understand what drives them. Enlighten us, Counselor Zreth said, his tone dripping with skepticism. Kira activated her datapad, and a new image appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a grainy photograph from 1945, a mushroom cloud rising over a Japanese city. This is Hiroshima, she said. The first use of nuclear weapons in warfare. You showed me timelines where we destroy ourselves with these weapons. But do you know what happened after this moment? The counselors waited. We looked at what we'd done and we were horrified. Not all of us, not immediately. But enough of us over time. We created treaties. We established rules. We recognized that we'd built something that could end everything, and we chose to step back. Not because we were forced to. Not because some outside power intervened. We did it ourselves. Treaties that could be broken at any moment, the geometric being noted. Yes, Kira agreed. They could be. But they haven't been. For 80 years, despite countless conflicts and crises, no one has used these weapons again in war. Because we learned. We adapted. We grew. She changed the image. Now it showed the Earth from space, the famous blue marble photograph taken during the Apollo missions. This picture changed us. When we first saw our world from space, something shifted in our collective consciousness. We realized how small we are. How fragile. How alone in the vast darkness. It didn't end our conflicts, but it planted a seed. A seed that has not yet grown, the crystalline tree being chimed. Your species still wages war. We do, Kira admitted. But look at the trend. She pulled up statistics, graphs showing human conflict over millennia. War is decreasing. Deaths from violence are declining. International cooperation is increasing. Yes, we still fight. But we fight less than we did a century ago, which was less than the century before that. We're getting better, generation by generation. Too slowly, Counselor Zreth hissed. At your current rate of moral development, it will take centuries before you're safe. Maybe, Kira said. But we'll get there. Because that's what humans do. We adapt. It's our greatest survival trait, the one you haven't accounted for in your projections. She brought up a new series of images. Medical researchers. Engineers. Artists. Scientists. You want to know what makes humans different? We don't just adapt to our environment. We adapt our environment to us. And when we can't do that, we adapt ourselves. Every challenge we face, we find a way through it or around it or over it. We're not the strongest species. We're not the smartest. But we're stubborn. We don't give up. Stubbornness is not a virtue when applied to destructive ends, Vex observed. No, Kira agreed. But it's also the quality that lets us overcome what seems impossible. Let me tell you a story. The chamber fell silent. Kira could feel their attention sharpen. Good. She needed them to hear this. In 1914, humanity stumbled into a war that consumed our entire world. We called it the Great War and later the First World War because we were naive enough to think there might be more. Millions died in muddy trenches, fighting for meters of ground. Chemical weapons. Machine guns. Artillery that could obliterate entire battalions. It was horror beyond description. This supports our assessment, the geometric being said. Wait, Kira held up a hand. On December 24, 1914, something unexpected happened. German and British soldiers who'd been killing each other for months stopped fighting. It was Christmas Eve. Someone started singing. Then someone else joined in. Then more voices. Before long, soldiers from both sides climbed out of their trenches. They met in no man's land, the killing ground between their armies. She pulled up archival images, faded photographs of soldiers in different uniforms standing together, smiling. They exchanged gifts, cigarettes, food, stories about their families. They played soccer together. For one day, in the middle of the bloodiest war the world had yet seen, enemies became human to each other. Their commanders ordered them to resume fighting the next day, and they did. But some refused to aim at the men they'd shared Christmas with. Some units had to be rotated out because the soldiers wouldn't kill people they'd met. Kira looked up at the counselors. You see violence in our history. But you're missing the other half. Even in our worst moments, even in the depths of mechanized slaughter, humanity keeps breaking through. We keep recognizing each other. We keep choosing connection over hatred even when it defies orders, even when it endangers ourselves. For the first time, she saw something shift in the counselor's expressions. Uncertainty, perhaps. Or curiosity. That's just one story, Counselor Zreth said, but his tone had lost some of its edge. I have thousands, Kira replied. Should I tell you about the Japanese diplomat who saved thousands of Jewish refugees during the Holocaust, defying his government's orders? Or the Soviet submarine commander who refused to launch nuclear weapons during the Cuban Missile Crisis, preventing World War III? Or the ordinary people who hid their neighbors during genocides, risked their lives to rescue strangers, chose mercy when vengeance would have been easier? She advanced through images rapidly now. Rescue workers at disaster sites. Doctors treating patients in war zones. Volunteers building schools in impoverished regions. Scientists sharing research across national boundaries. You've modeled our capacity for destruction. But have you modeled our capacity for sacrifice? For innovation? For forgiveness? These aren't bugs in human programming. They're features. They're what makes us who we are. High Chancellor Vex leaned back, his silver skin rippling with what might have been thought. These are inspiring examples, Ambassador. But they are exceptions. Outliers in a species defined by tribalism and conflict. Are they? Kira challenged. Or are the conflicts the outliers and you've just been focused on the wrong data? Think about it. You have 7 billion humans on Earth right now. If we were as violent and irrational as your models suggest, we'd be in constant chaos. But we're not. Most humans most of the time choose cooperation. They go to work, raise families, help their neighbors, create art, pursue knowledge. The violence you focus on is real, but it's the exception, not the rule. She could see them processing this, running calculations, reconsidering assumptions. I'm not asking you to ignore our flaws, Kira continued. I'm asking you to see the complete picture. Yes, we wage war. We also wage peace. Yes, we destroy. We also build. Yes, we're capable of terrible cruelty. We're also capable of stunning compassion. We're contradictory and complicated and messy. But we're also learning, growing, evolving. Not fast enough for your timeline maybe, but fast enough for ours. She took a step forward on her platform, voice rising with intensity. You want to know if humanity will choose wisely when it reaches the stars? I can't guarantee it. No one can. But I can tell you this, we've survived ice ages and plagues and wars and disasters that should have ended us. We've stared into the abyss of our own extinction multiple times and pulled ourselves back. We've built weapons that could end our world and then chosen not to use them. We've recognized problems like climate change and poverty and disease, and we're working to solve them. Slowly, imperfectly, with setbacks and failures. But we're trying. The chamber was absolutely silent now. Even the ambient hum of the station seemed to have faded. That's what humans do, Kira said quietly. We try. We fail. We get back up. We try again. We learn. We adapt. We overcome. It's written into every part of our culture. Our stories celebrate the underdog, the person who won't quit, the small act of defiance that changes everything. Because that's who we are. We're the species that looks at the impossible and says, watch me. She met High Chancellor Vex's black eyes directly. So yes, we're dangerous. Yes, we're unpredictable. Yes, we might make terrible mistakes in the future. But we're also the species that will pick ourselves up afterward, learn from those mistakes and do better next time. That's not a guarantee of success. But it's a reason for hope. And I think hope is exactly what your projections are missing. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Counselor Zreth leaned forward, his scales shifting to a deep amber color. You speak well, human. But words are not evidence. How do we know your species will continue this pattern? How do we know you won't be like the Kreth, who also spoke of peace and learning, right up until they launched their holy war? Kira smiled grimly. You don't know. You can't know. That's the point. The future isn't written. Your projections are based on the assumption that we'll continue to be what we've always been. But humans are defined by our ability to change. We're not bound by our past. We're shaped by it, yes, but not imprisoned by it. Then give us proof, Vex demanded. Show us evidence that humanity has truly changed, truly evolved beyond your violent origins. Kira nodded slowly. This was what she'd been building toward. I can do better than that, she said. I can show you who we're becoming. But it's going to require something from you. What? The crystalline tree being asked, its branches chiming with curiosity. Stop watching us from a distance. Come to Earth. Meet us. Not as judges or observers but as neighbors. See for yourselves what humanity really is. Let us show you our music, our art, our dreams, our struggles. Let us share a meal with you, debate with you, learn from you. Judge us not by our past or your projections, but by who we are right now, in this moment. The counselors erupted in discussion, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of alien discourse. Finally, Vex raised a hand for silence. That is unprecedented, he said. The Assembly has never sent representatives to a pre-contact species. Maybe that's the problem, Kira said boldly. Maybe you can't truly understand a species by watching from orbit. Maybe you need to walk among us, break bread with us, see the world through our eyes. Isn't that how real judgment should work? Not from on high but face to face. She could see them wavering. It was time for her final play. You said you wanted truth, she continued. The truth is, I can't prove humanity will never make terrible mistakes. No one can promise that. But I can promise that if you quarantine us, if you condemn us based on fear of what we might become, you'll never know what we could have been. You'll never see the contributions we could make, the perspectives we could offer, the problems we might help solve. You'll have chosen certainty over possibility, fear over hope. And isn't that exactly the choice you're afraid we'll make? The chamber fell silent once more. Kira stood on her platform, heart pounding, knowing she'd said everything she could. Now it was up to them. High Chancellor Vex rose from his seat, his silver form shimmering in the chamber's light. We will deliberate, he said. Ambassador Thorn, you have given us much to consider. More than we anticipated. We will recess until tomorrow, at which time we will deliver our verdict. The platform began to lower. As Kira descended, she heard Vex's voice one last time. An ambassador? Your invitation is noted. The council will discuss it. Back in her quarters, Kira finally allowed herself to collapse. She'd done everything possible. Presented the best case she could. Now it was out of her hands. She looked out at the stars, wondering if somewhere among them, there were other young species facing their own judgment. Other ambassadors standing alone before powers beyond their comprehension. And she wondered if humanity deserved to join them among the stars, or if the council's fears were justified. She wouldn't have to wonder long. Tomorrow she would have her answer. The revelation. Kira barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the counselors' faces, heard their accusations, felt the weight of billions of souls depending on words she'd already spoken. When dawn finally came to the station's artificial day-night cycle, she was already dressed and waiting. The guards arrived exactly on schedule. They seemed different today, less mechanical in their movements. One of them, the four-armed pilot who'd brought her from the Wanderer's Hope, paused at her door. Good fortune, Ambassador, it said through its translator. The first words any of the station's inhabitants had spoken to her directly. Thank you, Kira replied, surprised. The walk to the judgment chamber felt longer today. More beings lined the corridors watching her pass. Word had spread, she realized. Her trial wasn't just about humanity anymore. It had become something the entire station was invested in. The platform rose for what might be the last time. As she reached the center of the chamber, Kira noticed something different. The 7 counselors were present, but they weren't alone. Behind each of them stood additional figures, representatives of their species perhaps, or advisors. The judgment had clearly sparked debate beyond the council itself. High Chancellor Vex stood, and the chamber fell silent. Ambassador Kira Thorn of Earth, he began, his voice carrying the weight of finality. The council has deliberated through the night. We have reviewed our projections, examined our precedents, and considered your words with the gravity they deserve. Kira's heart hammered against her ribs. Your defense was unexpected, Vex continued. You did not deny humanity's flaws or make empty promises about your species' future. Instead, you asked us to reconsider what those flaws might mean. To see them not as inevitable paths to destruction, but as challenges your species works to overcome. He paused, and Kira couldn't read his expression. This council has existed for over 15,000 years. In that time, we have passed judgment on hundreds of emerging civilizations. We have seen species that seemed peaceful turn violent. We have seen promising cultures collapse under their own contradictions. And yes, we have made mistakes. Species we quarantined that might have flourished. Species we welcomed that brought disaster. The crystalline tree being's branches chimed softly. The question before us is not whether humanity is dangerous. All species capable of reaching the stars are dangerous. The question is whether humanity can be trusted with that danger. Whether you will be good neighbors in the cosmic community, or a threat that must be contained. We have decided, Vex said, and Kira held her breath, that we cannot answer that question from a distance. Wait, what? Your proposal, Vex continued, to send representatives to Earth, to meet humanity face to face rather than observe from orbit, was initially met with resistance. Such direct contact violates multiple protocols and carries significant risks. However, after much debate, we have concluded that those risks are necessary. Kira felt her knees go weak with relief, but Vex wasn't finished. This is not an acquittal, Ambassador. It is a postponement of judgment. We will send a delegation to Earth. They will spend 1 standard year living among your people, observing your cultures, engaging with your societies. At the end of that year, they will return and deliver a final verdict based on direct experience rather than distant observation. However, Counselor Zreth interjected, his scales darkening to a warning red, understand that this is humanity's only chance. If our delegation reports that you are indeed the threat our projections suggest, there will be no appeal, no second trial. Earth will be quarantined indefinitely. Your species will be confined to your solar system, prevented from reaching beyond by means you cannot overcome. You will be allowed to develop or destroy yourselves as you choose, but you will do so alone, cut off from the galactic community forever. The geometric being rotated slowly. Additionally, certain conditions apply. First, Earth's governments must agree to host our delegation without restriction. They must allow us to move freely, observe openly, and interact with your population without interference. Second, your species must not be informed of the stakes of this evaluation. They must act naturally, not perform for our benefit. Third, you, Ambassador Thorne, will be responsible for facilitating this contact and ensuring our delegation's safety. Kira processed this rapidly. They were giving humanity a chance, but a conditional one, and the weight of it fell directly on her shoulders. I accept, she said immediately. On behalf of humanity, I accept your terms. Do not be so quick to accept, Vex warned. You do not yet know who will comprise our delegation or what they will examine. Some of us remain convinced that humanity is beyond redemption. Those individuals will be particularly motivated to find evidence supporting their position. He gestured to the platforms around him. Our delegation will consist of 7 members, 1 from each founding species of the Assembly. They will have full diplomatic immunity and unrestricted access to Earth. They will ask difficult questions. They will visit places you might prefer they not see. They will probe your species' weaknesses and test your stated values. This will not be comfortable for humanity. We can handle uncomfortable, Kira said with more confidence than she felt. When will the delegation arrive? We depart in 3 days, a new voice said. Kira turned to see a figure step forward from behind Counselor Zretha's platform. It was humanoid, but with deep blue skin covered in bioluminescent patterns that pulsed like a heartbeat. 2 large eyes, entirely golden, regarded her with intense curiosity. I am Lyris of the Arandi, the figure said, moving with fluid grace. I have volunteered to be part of the delegation. I confess your species intrigues me, Ambassador Thorne. Your contradictions, your passionate defense despite acknowledging your flaws, your invitation when any rational species would have kept us at a distance. She smiled, revealing teeth that were just slightly too sharp. I look forward to understanding what makes humans so interesting. Others stepped forward, introducing themselves. Corvin, a massive armored being from a high-gravity world. Sherlar, whose form seemed to shift between states of matter. Dr. Wellis, the crystalline tree being, whose expertise was in cultural evolution. Each would come to Earth, live among humans, and judge whether humanity deserved a place among the stars. The delegation will arrive on Earth with minimal technology, Vex explained. We want to experience your world as your own people do, not insulated by advanced systems. We will eat your food, breathe your air, navigate your societies. Only in this way can we truly understand your species. Kira nodded, her mind already racing through the logistics. She'd need to contact Earth immediately, coordinate with the government, prepare populations for first contact. This would change everything. One more thing, Vex said, and his tone made Kira's relief evaporate. There is a faction within the Assembly that believes this entire proceeding is a mistake. They argue that humanity should be quarantined immediately, that direct contact risks contamination of our delegation or premature interference in your development. This faction is powerful, Ambassador. If anything happens to our delegation, if any harm comes to them on Earth, it will be seen as proof of humanity's danger. The quarantine will be immediate and permanent. No pressure, Kira muttered. Vex's expression might have been a smile. Indeed. You have 3 days to return to Earth and prepare your species for our arrival. Use them wisely. The platform began to descend, but this time Kira wasn't leaving in defeat or uncertainty. She was leaving with a mission, with hope, with a real chance to save her species. As she walked through the corridors back to her shuttle, the same 4-armed pilot fell into step beside her. The station is divided, it said quietly. Half believe you've doomed humanity by inviting scrutiny. Half believe you've saved your species by choosing transparency over hiding. Which half are you? Kira asked. The pilot's translator hummed for a moment. I think any species brave or foolish enough to invite judgment while admitting its flaws deserves a chance. But then I'm just a shuttle pilot. The Council might see it differently after a year on your world. Back aboard the Wanderer's Hope, Kira immediately sent a priority transmission to Earth. The response came within hours: shock, panic, then cautious optimism. The Secretary-General of the United Earth Coalition wanted to speak with her directly. You invited them here? Director Sarah Chen's holographic face was a mixture of disbelief and anger. Without authorization? Without consulting anyone? There wasn't time for committee meetings, Kira shot back. It was invite them or watch them quarantine us forever. I made a call. A call that affects 7 billion people. A call that gives those 7 billion people a chance. Kira leaned forward. Director, they were going to lock us away. Trap us in our solar system until we either evolved or destroyed ourselves. This way we get to show them who we really are. Chin was silent for a long moment. You understand what you've done? First contact, the most significant moment in human history, and it's happening under duress. As an evaluation. A test we might fail. I know. But it's better than the alternative. Maybe. Chin sighed. The coalition is convening an emergency session. We have 3 days to prepare the entire planet for alien visitors. Do you have any idea how we're supposed to do that? Carefully, Kira said. And honestly, that's the only way this works. First contact. The delegation's ship arrived on a Tuesday morning, descending through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star. Kira watched from the landing site in Geneva, where the United Earth Coalition had hastily prepared a reception area. News cameras from every nation on the planet were trained on the sky. This was it. Humanity's first official contact with alien life. And it was happening because they were being judged. The ship was smaller than Kira expected, elegant in its simplicity. It touched down without a sound, and a ramp extended from its side. 7 figures emerged, and Kira heard the collective gasp from the assembled crowd. Lyris came first, her blue skin shimmering in Earth's sunlight, bioluminescent patterns dancing across her features. She paused at the top of the ramp, golden eyes scanning the crowd, and smiled. Your sun feels warm, she said, her voice carrying clearly despite the distance. We have traveled far to be here. Behind her came Corvin, the armored being, each step making the ground tremble slightly. Then Sherlar, whose form seemed to blur at the edges, not quite solid. Dr. Wellis descended with musical chiming sounds emanating from crystalline branches. 3 others followed, each radically different from anything Earth had ever seen. Director Chin stepped forward, her prepared speech forgotten. Welcome to Earth, she said simply. We're honored to host you. The honor is ours, Lyris replied. Though let us speak plainly. We are not here as tourists or guests. We are here to understand your species, to determine if humanity is ready to join the broader galactic community. This year will be difficult for all of us. We understand, Chin said. You'll have complete freedom to go anywhere, speak with anyone, observe anything. We have nothing to hide. Corvin's mechanical translator rumbled. We shall see. The first weeks were chaos. The delegation split up, each member choosing a different region of Earth to explore. Lyris went to Tokyo, fascinated by the density of human population and the way millions of people coordinated in such close proximity. Dr. Wellis selected the Amazon rainforest, wanting to understand humanity's relationship with the natural world. Corvin chose a war zone in Central Africa, much to everyone's alarm. Kira spent her time rotating between delegation members, facilitating their needs and answering endless questions. But it was Lyris who worried her most. The Irandi diplomat was sharp, perceptive, and seemed to delight in finding humanity's contradictions. Explain this to me, Lyris said one evening, standing on a Tokyo rooftop as the city sprawled beneath them in a galaxy of lights. Your species has the technology to feed everyone on this planet. I have reviewed your agricultural output, your distribution systems. Yet millions starve. Why? Kira had known these questions were coming, but they still hurt. It's complicated. Economics, politics, infrastructure. No, Lyris interrupted. It is simple. You choose not to. Your nations prioritize other things over ensuring every human has food. This is a choice. You're right, Kira admitted. It is a choice. And it's one we're working to change. Look at the trends. Extreme poverty has decreased by 80% in the last 50 years. Child mortality is down. Access to clean water has expanded. We're not perfect, but we're getting better. Better is not the same as good. No, but it's better than worse. Kira pointed to the city below. See those lights? 50 years ago, a quarter of the world lived without electricity. Now it's less than 10%. Every generation we solve problems that the previous generation thought impossible. It's slow, frustratingly slow, but it's progress. Lyris turned those golden eyes on her. And the cost of that progress? I have read about your climate change, your pollution, your habitat destruction. You advance by consuming your world. We're learning to do better. Renewable energy, conservation efforts, reforestation. Only after you've already caused immense damage. Lyris shook her head. This is what concerns the Council. Humans only seem to learn after suffering the consequences. You only make treaties after wars. You only develop medicine after plagues. You only protect your environment after destroying so much of it. You are a reactive species, not a proactive one. Kira wanted to argue, but the words died in her throat. Because Lyris was right. Meanwhile, across the world, Dr. Wellis was having a very different experience. The crystalline being had spent weeks in the Amazon, observing the indigenous communities who lived in harmony with the forest. One evening, an elder named Micah invited Dr. Wellis to participate in a traditional ceremony. You wish to understand humans? Micah said through a translator. Then you must understand this. We are not separate from the earth. We are part of it. What we do to the forest, we do to ourselves. Dr. Wellis's branches chimed thoughtfully. Yet your species as a whole does not seem to share this wisdom. The forest shrinks year by year. Because too many of my people have forgotten, Micah replied. They moved to cities, adopted other ways of living. They lost connection with the land. But some of us remember. And we teach anyone who will listen. Is it enough? Can a minority of humans preserve what the majority destroys? Micah smiled sadly. Every tree that grows starts as a single seed. Every movement starts with a single voice. We plant seeds, Dr. Wellis. We speak our truths. And slowly more people listen. Change comes like the river, sometimes raging, sometimes trickling, but always moving forward. That night, Dr. Wellis sent a report back to the council. The summary was brief. Humans contain multitudes. The question is which aspects will prevail. Corvin's experience was the most troubling. He'd positioned himself in a region torn by conflict, wanting to see humanity's violence firsthand. What he found was more complex than he'd anticipated. He watched soldiers fight for territory they didn't own, following orders they sometimes didn't believe in. But he also watched medics from opposing sides treat each other's wounded. He saw enemy combatants share water during a ceasefire. He witnessed a young soldier refuse to fire on civilians, accepting punishment rather than compromise his morals. One night, a local commander named James sat with Corvin beside a dying fire. You're here to judge us, James said. It wasn't a question. Yes. Then judge this. James gestured to the darkness around them. I've killed people. More than I can count. I follow orders, complete missions, do what I'm told. And I hate it. I hate every second of it. But if I don't fight, someone else will take my place. Probably someone who won't hesitate, who won't lose sleep over civilian casualties. So I fight, and I try to do it with as much humanity as I can hold on to. That is a rationalization, Corvin said. You justify your violence by saying others would be worse. Maybe. Or maybe it's the only way I can keep doing this without losing my mind. James poked at the fire with a stick. You want to know the truth about humans? We're walking contradictions. We build and we destroy. We love and we hate. We're capable of stunning cruelty and breathtaking compassion, sometimes in the same person on the same day. We're messy and complicated, and we don't always make sense even to ourselves. This does not inspire confidence. It shouldn't, James agreed. But here's the thing. Every human you meet is fighting battles you can't see, struggling with choices that have no good answers, trying to do the right thing when the right thing isn't clear. We fail a lot. We hurt each other. We make mistakes. But most of us, most of the time, are trying our best. And sometimes that's enough. Corvin was silent for a long time. Finally he said, On my world we value certainty, strength, clear purpose. Your species has none of these things. No, James admitted. We don't. What we have instead is hope. The stubborn, irrational belief that tomorrow can be better than today. It's not much, but it's kept us going for a long time. 6 months into the evaluation, the delegation reconvened in Geneva for a progress report. Kira sat in on the meeting, her stomach churning with anxiety as each member shared their observations. The reports were mixed. Some members saw progress and potential. Others saw chaos and danger. The debate grew heated, with Corvin and Lyris taking opposing positions. They are children playing with weapons they don't understand, Corvin argued. They lack the wisdom to wield their own technology safely. They are adolescents, Lyris countered. Awkward, prone to mistakes but growing, learning. Every species goes through this phase. The question is whether we allow them to mature or cut them down while they're still developing. The Kreth were also developing, another delegate said darkly. Until they weren't. Humans are not Kreth, Dr. Wellis chimed in. I have seen their capacity for connection with their world, with each other. It is buried beneath layers of modern dysfunction, but it exists. It can be rekindled. In time, Sherlar added, their forms solidifying enough to gesture expressively. But do they have time? Their planet's climate is destabilizing. Their weapons grow more powerful. Their artificial intelligences become more sophisticated. The window for peaceful development may be closing. Kira listened to them dissect her species like a biology specimen, clinical and detached. She wanted to scream at them to defend humanity more fiercely. But she'd promised transparency. She'd invited this scrutiny. There is another factor we must consider, Lyris said, turning to Kira. Ambassador Thorne herself. She represents humanity, but is she representative of humanity? All eyes turned to Kira. What do you mean? She asked carefully. You are military trained, educated, selected by your government to present your species in the best light. You are, by definition, exceptional. Not average. The question is whether the average human shares your values, your restraint, your capacity for growth. Or are you an outlier, and the bulk of your species more violent, more short-sighted than you? It was a fair question. One Kira had asked herself countless times. I'm human, she said finally. I'm not special. I have flaws, biases, blind spots. I've made mistakes. I've hurt people. I've failed at things I thought I'd succeed at. In that sense, I'm exactly average. But I also try to do better. To learn from my mistakes. To treat others with respect. To consider consequences before acting. And you know what? Most humans do the same. We're not perfect, but we try. That's what makes us human. The room fell silent. Then Lyris smiled, that sharp-toothed expression that Kira had learned to read as approval. Then perhaps, Lyris said, we should spend the next 6 months observing not the exceptional humans or the worst ones, but the average ones. The ordinary people living ordinary lives. They may tell us more about humanity's future than any diplomat or soldier. The other delegates agreed. For the remainder of the evaluation, they would embed themselves in everyday human life. Work regular jobs. Live in typical neighborhoods. Experience humanity not from the outside looking in, but from within. Kira watched them disperse, each heading to their chosen location. Lyris to a middle school where she would work as a teacher's aide. Dr. Wellis to a community garden in Detroit. Corvin to a construction site in Mumbai. Sherlar to a research laboratory in Seoul. 6 months. That's all humanity had left to prove itself. 6 months of ordinary days, ordinary interactions, ordinary moments. Kira just hoped that ordinary would be enough. The test. The second half of the evaluation was quieter than the first, but somehow more intense. The delegates weren't examining humanity's grand achievements or failures anymore. They were living alongside humans, experiencing the mundane reality of daily existence on Earth. Lyris found herself in a middle school in Cleveland, Ohio, surrounded by teenagers who were simultaneously fascinated by her alien appearance and utterly indifferent to her outsider status within a week. She helped grade papers, supervised lunch periods, and tried to understand human adolescence. Miss Lyris, a student named Marcus asked during a free period, "What's it like on your planet?" "Different," she replied, watching the cafeteria chaos around them. Students trading food, arguing about something called TikTok, forming and dissolving social groups with bewildering speed. We don't have this. What, cafeterias? Social complexity at this scale. Irandi children are educated in small cohorts, very structured. This. She gestured at the room, this is beautiful chaos. It's just lunch, another student, Zoe, said with a shrug. No, Lyris said thoughtfully. It's hundreds of individuals negotiating social hierarchies, forming bonds, establishing identities, all while consuming nutrition and adhering to implicit behavioral rules. It's remarkable. The students exchanged glances. You're weird, Miss Lyris, Marcus said, but he was smiling. Over the following weeks, Lyris observed patterns that her official research hadn't captured. She saw students include a lonely classmate in their group without being asked. She watched a bully apologize after a teacher's intervention, and actually mean it. She witnessed teenage drama that seemed catastrophic to the participants but resolved itself through communication, compromise, and sometimes just time. One day she stopped a fight between two students. Both were angry, faces flushed, fists raised. In her analysis, this was exactly the kind of violence the council feared. He disrespected my sister, one boy shouted. I didn't mean, the other started. Enough, Lyris said, stepping between them. Talk. Explain. Use words. Words don't fix everything, the first boy snapped. No, Lyris agreed. But violence fixes nothing. It only creates more problems. So talk first. If talking fails, then we find another way. but always try talking first. The boys talked. It was messy, emotional, frustrating. But they worked it out. No punches thrown. No lasting harm done. Later, the principal thanked Lyris. I don't know what you said to them, but it worked. I said what any reasonable being would say, Lyris replied. But they did the hard part. They chose dialogue over violence. They made the difficult choice. Yeah, the principal said. That's what we teach here. Doesn't always take, but when it does. She smiled. Makes it all worthwhile. That night, Lyris updated her report. Human children are taught conflict resolution, emotional regulation, and peaceful coexistence. The education is imperfect and implementation varies, but the intent is clear. They are training the next generation to be better than the current one. This is evidence of species-level learning. Meanwhile, Dr. Wellis had integrated into a community garden in Detroit, where dozens of volunteers transformed vacant lots into green spaces. The crystalline being found kinship with a woman named Dorothy, who'd been tending these gardens for 30 years. Why do you do this? Dr. Wellis asked, watching Dorothy plant tomato seedlings. Because concrete and abandoned buildings don't feed anyone, Dorothy replied. My neighborhood used to be vibrant. Then the economy collapsed, people left, businesses closed. But we're still here. So we garden. We create life where others saw only death. But surely your government should provide food assistance, economic support? Sure, and they do some. But we don't wait for someone else to fix our problems. We fix them ourselves together. That's how humans survive. We take care of each other. Dr. Wellis worked alongside Dorothy and others, learning the rhythms of Earth's seasons, the satisfaction of nurturing growth, the community that formed around shared purpose. People from different backgrounds, different beliefs, different circumstances, all working together to create something beautiful and useful. One evening, a teenager spray-painted graffiti on the garden's fence. Dorothy caught him in the act. What are you doing? Dr. Wellis expected anger, perhaps human violence. Instead, Dorothy just looked tired. The boy dropped the spray can. I don't know. Bored. Come here tomorrow, Dorothy said. Noon. We need help building a new raised bed. You any good with tools? The boy blinked. You want me to help? After you made a mistake. Yes, mistakes happen. What matters is what you do next. She picked up the spray can and handed it back to him. Tomorrow. No. Don't make me come find you. The next day the boy showed up. He worked hard, barely talking. But he came back the day after. And the day after that. By the end of the month he was teaching other kids how to build garden beds. Why didn't you punish him? Dr. Wellis asked Dorothy. What would that accomplish? He made a mistake. Probably has stuff going on at home, at school, who knows? He didn't need punishment. He needed purpose. Needed to be part of something. So I gave him that opportunity. Dr. Wellis's report that night. Humans possess a remarkable capacity for forgiveness and redemption. They consistently offer second chances, sometimes third and fourth chances. This might seem like weakness, but I observe it as strength. They believe in change, in transformation, in the possibility that anyone can become better. This is foundational to their social cohesion. Corvin's experience was perhaps the most transformative. The massive armored being had taken a job at a construction site in Mumbai, doing heavy lifting that his strength made easy. His co-workers were initially intimidated, then curious, then accepting. His supervisor, a man named Rajesh, treated him no differently than any other worker. You show up on time, you work hard, you don't cause problems, we're good. Don't care if you're alien or not. Corvin appreciated this directness. But what surprised him was the camaraderie. During breaks, workers shared food, told stories, complained about everything from traffic to politics to their families. They included Corvin in these conversations as if his participation was natural. You got family, Corvin? One worker, Amit, asked during lunch. I have a pod collective. 17 members. Like brothers and sisters? Similar, yes. You miss them? The question caught Corvin off guard. In all his time observing humanity, no one had asked about his feelings. Yes, I do. Amit nodded sympathetically. I got family in Bangladesh. Don't see them much. Work here, send money home. It's hard being away. They sat in companionable silence, two beings from different worlds, sharing the universal experience of loneliness and duty. One day an accident occurred. A support beam collapsed, trapping a worker beneath debris. Everyone rushed to help, including Corvin, whose strength made the difference in lifting the beam. But it was the human's reaction that struck him. They didn't wait for official rescue services. They didn't stop to consider liability or risk. They just acted, immediately and collectively, to save their coworker. Some lifted, some dug, some called for help, some provided comfort. Each person contributed what they could. The worker survived with minor injuries. Later, Rajesh clapped Corvin on the shoulder. "Good work today. I only lifted the beam. You were part of the team. That's what matters. When one of us is in trouble, all of us respond. That's how we survive." Corvin's report: "I came here believing humans were individualistic, driven by self-interest. I observe now that this is incomplete understanding. Yes, humans have individual identities and desires. But they also have deep collective instincts. They form groups, teams, communities. They protect each other, often at personal cost. They have word for this: solidarity. It is their strength." 6 months passed faster than anyone expected. As the evaluation period drew to a close, the delegates gathered once more in Geneva. This time the atmosphere was different. Less formal. More thoughtful. They sat in a circle, human style, rather than on elevated platforms. It felt appropriate somehow. "We must discuss our findings," Lyris said, "and reach a decision. But I confess I am conflicted. I came here certain of my conclusion. Now." She trailed off, golden eyes distant. "Now you see them differently," Dr. Wellis finished. "As do I. They are deeply flawed. But also deeply hopeful. Dangerously divided. But also remarkably unified when it matters. They destroy. But they also create. They are walking contradictions. Contradictions that might destroy themselves and others," Corvin said. But his tone lacked the certainty it once had. "Or contradictions that might surprise us all." "The question remains," Sherlar said, form-shifting anxiously. "Do we believe humanity will choose wisdom over destruction when the critical moments come? Our projections still show significant probability of catastrophic outcomes." "Projections are not destiny," Lyris countered. "I have learned this from them. The future is not fixed. It is created by billions of choices, made by billions of individuals, every single day. And I have observed that more often than not, humans choose connection over isolation, cooperation over conflict, hope over despair. But not always," another delegate pointed out. "Sometimes they choose poorly. Sometimes catastrophically." "Yes," Lyris agreed. "But they learn from those failures. They adapt. They teach their children different values. They create systems to prevent repeating mistakes. It is slow, frustratingly slow. But it is change. It is evolution. It is exactly what we should hope for in an emerging species." The debate continued for hours. Arguments for and against. Evidence and counter-evidence. Hopes and fears. Finally, Dr. Wellis spoke. "Perhaps we are asking the wrong question. We ask, are humans ready for the stars? But the better question might be, are the stars ready for humans? Because ready or not, they are coming. The question is whether they come as our partners or our problems. So we make them partners," Lyris said. "We guide them. We share our knowledge, our experience, our mistakes. We give them the tools to navigate the challenges ahead, rather than leaving them to figure it out alone." "That is not how the Assembly operates," Corvin said. "We do not interfere with developing species." "Then perhaps," Lyris said quietly, "it is time the Assembly changed. Perhaps humans are not the only ones who need to evolve." Silence fell over the group. The weight of what Lyris was suggesting was immense. Changing Assembly policy that had existed for millennia. All because of one young species that had invited judgment and shown them their whole selves, flaws and all. "We need more time," Sherlar said. "This decision is too important to rush." "Agreed," the others said. They would take their findings back to the full council. Present their observations, their experiences, their recommendations. The final decision would come from the 7 founding species together, as it always had. But for the first time in the evaluation, Kira felt hope. Real, genuine hope that humanity might receive not just mercy but acceptance. The delegates prepared to depart Earth. There were goodbyes to say, final observations to make, reports to complete. Lyris found Kira standing alone on the landing platform where they'd first arrived. "Nervous?" the Irandi diplomat asked. "Terrified," Kira admitted. "Everything depends on what you tell the council." "No," Lyris corrected gently. "Everything depends on what humans do with whatever time they're given. We can recommend, advise, guide. But your species' future is in your own hands. It always has been." She placed a hand on Kira's shoulder, a gesture she'd learned from humans. "For what it's worth, I will speak for humanity tomorrow. I believe you deserve your chance among the stars. But more than that, I believe the galaxy needs what humans offer. your stubborn hope, your adaptability, your refusal to accept that anything is impossible. These are gifts, Kira. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Thank you, Kira whispered. Thank you, Lyris replied, for inviting us, for showing us the truth, for trusting us with your world's future. That took remarkable courage. The ship departed that evening, carrying 7 delegates who'd arrived as judges and left as something more complex. Not quite friends but no longer strangers. Changed by their time on Earth in ways they were still processing. Kira watched them go, then turned to face the cameras and reporters who'd gathered. The whole world was watching, waiting for her assessment. Well? Director Chen asked. What do you think? Kira smiled, feeling lighter than she had in a year. I think we did everything we could. The rest is up to them. And up to us. And if they decide against us? Then we prove them wrong. We keep growing, keep learning, keep becoming better. With or without their approval. Because that's what humans do. She walked away from the landing site, back toward the city where ordinary humans were living ordinary lives, making ordinary choices that would collectively determine their species' extraordinary future. The judgment was coming. But humanity was ready to face it. The verdict. 3 months after the delegates departed Earth, Kira received the summons. Not a holographic seal this time, but a simple message. The Council has reached its decision. Ambassador Thorne returned to the Viridian Nexus. The journey back felt different. Last time she traveled in uncertainty, carrying the weight of humanity's unknown fate. This time she traveled in hope but also in peace. Whatever the Council decided, she knew humans had shown their truth. That had to be enough. The Wanderer's hope dropped out of FTL at the Nexus, and Kira was immediately struck by how much had changed. The station was busier, more chaotic. Ships from dozens of species crowded the approaches, far more than during her first visit. What's going on? She asked Captain Hendricks. According to station communications, the Assembly is having some kind of internal crisis. Your trial triggered debates throughout the entire galactic community. Apparently, other species are questioning policies, demanding reforms. You've stirred up quite the political storm. Kira's stomach churned. That could be good or very, very bad. The shuttle ride to the station was different too. The pilot, not the same one as before, actually spoke to her. Big day, human. Half the galaxy is watching. No pressure, Kira muttered. You'll do fine. My clutch mate visited Earth during the evaluation. Worked at something called a coffee shop, in Seattle. Said humans were the most exhausting and most fascinating beings he'd ever met. Talked for hours about someone named Karen, who complained about everything. The pilot's translator approximated a laugh. He wants to go back. First time any of my clutch has ever wanted to revisit an evaluation subject. That was encouraging? Kira couldn't tell anymore. The judgment chamber was packed. Not just the 7 counselors, but hundreds of other beings filling observation platforms she hadn't noticed during her first visit. The air hummed with tension and anticipation. Kira took her place on the center platform as it rose. This time she wasn't alone. Projected beside her were the faces of Earth's leaders, the delegates who'd visited, and even some of the humans they'd worked with. Dorothy from the Detroit Garden. Rajesh from the Mumbai construction site. Principal Hernandez from the Cleveland School. High Chancellor Vex stood and silence fell instantly. Ambassador Kira Thorne of Earth, he began, and Kira noticed his voice lacked the cold formality of their first meeting. You stand before the Galactic Council for the final time. We have reviewed the reports from our delegation. We have debated their findings extensively. We have considered humanity's past, present, and possible futures. He paused and the silence stretched unbearably. This council has never faced a decision quite like this one. In the past, our judgments were clear. A species was either safe or dangerous, ready or unprepared. But humanity defies such simple categorization. You are simultaneously both and neither. You are the most contradictory species we have ever evaluated. Kira's heart hammered. Get to the point, she thought desperately. Delegate Lyris, please present your findings, Vex said. The Arandi diplomat stepped forward, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with what Kira had learned to read as determination. Honored Council, I came to Earth expecting to confirm our projections. I anticipated finding a violent, short-sighted species on the brink of self-destruction. Instead, I found something far more complex. Her golden eyes swept the chamber. I found a species in transition. Growing. Learning. Making mistakes, yes, but also correcting them. Building systems to prevent repeating failures. Teaching their children values they themselves are still learning to practice. She gestured and images filled the air. The middle school in Cleveland. Students learning conflict resolution. Teachers nurturing potential. I watched human children being trained in empathy, cooperation, peaceful problem solving. Not perfectly. Not uniformly. But consistently, across cultures and nations, humanity invests in trying to make the next generation wiser than the current one. More images. The community garden. The construction site. Hospitals. Research labs. Ordinary humans doing ordinary work with extraordinary care. But what struck me most, Lyris continued, was not their best moments or their worst. It was their average moments. The daily choices that define a species. I watched humans share resources without being asked. Comfort strangers. Help competitors. Include outsiders. These weren't spectacular acts of heroism. They were normal behaviors so common that humans themselves barely noticed. And that is what convinced me. She turned to face the council directly. A species is not defined by its extraordinary moments. It is defined by its ordinary ones. And in their ordinary moments, humans choose connection. They choose community. They choose more often than not to be kind. Not because they must. Not because they'll be rewarded. But because they've decided, collectively, that this is how they want to live. Counselor's wrath stirred. Delegate Lyris, your report is moving. But does sentiment override evidence? Our projections still show high probability of catastrophic outcomes. Your projections, Dr. Wellish chimed in, branches resonating, are based on historical patterns. But they don't account for something fundamental about humans. They change their patterns. They alter their trajectories. They see danger ahead and deliberately choose different paths. The crystalline being shared their own observations. The garden in Detroit. Dorothy's forgiveness. The community's resilience. Humans possess something rare in the galaxy, aggressive optimism. They look at impossible problems and believe they can solve them. This isn't naivety. It's determination backed by proven adaptability. They have survived ice ages, plagues, wars, disasters. Not through strength, but through stubborn refusal to give up. Corvin spoke next, his massive form somehow seeming less imposing than before. I went to Earth seeking evidence of humanity's violence. I found it. But I also found something unexpected. I found humans who fight and hate doing it, who kill and are haunted by it, who cause harm and spend the rest of their lives trying to atone for it. His report showed the construction site, the accident, the immediate, selfless response. They have word, solidarity. It means standing together, especially in hardship. This is not weakness. This is their greatest strength. When crisis comes, humans unite. When one falls, others lift them. This is not projection or hope. This is observed behavior, consistent across contexts. One by one, the other delegates shared their findings. Each offered a different perspective, but all reached similar conclusions. Humanity was risky, yes. Unpredictable, absolutely. But also capable of remarkable growth, stunning resilience, and unexpected wisdom. Finally, Sherlar spoke, their form solidifying enough to convey gravity. The question before us is not whether humans are perfect. They are not. The question is whether they are capable of becoming better. And based on our observations, the answer is unequivocal. Yes. Not just capable, but actively working toward it, constantly, imperfectly, determinately. High Chancellor Vex listened to all of this, his mercury silver skin rippling with thought. When the last delegate finished, he turned to the assembled council. We have heard the reports. Now we must decide. But before we vote, I must share something. He looked directly at Kira. Ambassador Thorne, when you first stood before us, I believed this trial was a formality. I believed we would find you wanting in quarantine Earth. I have presided over this council for 3 human lifetimes, and in that time, I have become cautious, rigid. I saw patterns and assumed they were laws. To be continued.